My name's Marianna Palka, and I'm Reggie Walsh from Glow, and you're listening to the CINIKRADIO podcast.
You're listening to the Cinik Radio podcast. Now, your hosts, Igrihe and Cinik.
And you're listening to the Cinik Radio podcast, and I'm your host, Cinik. And joining me, as always, the best tag team since the Moondogs, Igrihe and Ryan. And on this week's show, well, we have a fantastic interview with Ms. Marianna Palka. We also break down Glow Season 2. Spoiler alert, we love it. Because we are the Cinik Radio podcast. Like, listen, subscribe. Most importantly, we're professional podcasters. Don't try this at home. In baseball, they call a complete player a five-tool player. Well, in the world of film and TV, my guest today is a five-tool entertainer. Not only is she a darling at Sundance, but she also writes, directs, and is a hell of an actor. Ms. Marianna Palka joins the program. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You moved from Scotland to America when you were about 17 years old. Did you suffer any kind of culture shock?
No, because I moved to New York, so everyone was really nice, and there were a lot of people from different places, and I felt really supported by the Atlantic Theatre Company, which is where I studied, and I got to really express myself artistically, and I felt really comfortable, actually.
When you transitioned from theater to doing more TV and film work, what was the biggest difference between being on a stage and being in front of a camera?
Wow, that makes me really emotional as a concept because it was a real choice to shift into film. I had grown up just watching movies because we never had a television when I was growing up. We only watched cinema. So my mom was a photographer and always took our picture, and I felt like it was something that I was meant to do. I was meant to move into directing films, but I hadn't realized that when I moved to New York, because when I first got to America, I felt like I was just going to die on the stage as a grandmother, you know? Mm-hmm. So it was a real shift because you have to give up the idea of doing the play for the audience that's live, and you have to kind of accept that your crew is the audience, and you have to kind of, it's sort of like giving up a first love or something, you know. There's like a bittersweetness to that shift, but it was necessary, I guess.
Well, and you kind of lose that crowd reaction, right? I mean, when you're in the theater, it's direct, it's right away. You know, you're having impact on these people. Where you do film or TV, you kind of have to wait to see what the reception of it's going to be.
Right, and also the other actors on stage with you, that connection that you get doing a play, being in the bubble of the world of a play feels so seductive to me artistically. It just feels really nice to get to be with other actors, and in a movie it's different. You have a different kind of bubble, but thanks for calling. Did you call me a five-tool something?
A five-tool entertainer, absolutely.
Oh, I take that so seriously. That was so cool. That's like a huge compliment. I'm going to say that from now on.
Good. Just throw me out there when you say it. Cinik says I'm a five-tool entertainer. So who were some of your big influences growing up? What?
Oh, wow. Well, I had strange ones, you know, like they weren't strange. They were just different from other people, I suppose, because we were Polish, living in Scotland. So we watched a lot of Polish cinema. So I had these Polish film directors like Andrzej Wajda and Kieślowski to look up to, and Agnieszka Holland. And a lot of actors in their films were so soulful, you know, that I wanted to just do that, you know. And my mom and dad were helping bring down communism, essentially, in Eastern Europe. And so my mom and dad would bring a lot of theatre actors from Poland to Scotland to perform at the Edinburgh Festival and stuff like that. And so I met a lot of theatre actors who were really put together and very smart and really emotionally complex, and they were kind of fighting for their lives in a way, you know. The way that theatre was at that time in Poland, if you were doing plays, your life was basically in danger because you were kind of against the government. And so the perspective of that really made me feel like those people were my heroes, and that I wanted to do something like that. Like I wanted to make art that really changed the world or helped bring more freedom to a country, which is kind of what we're all doing right now still, you know. Creating stuff is really important, you know.
Especially with the way that the internet's become in the political environment now, it kind of more is shifting towards that Eastern Bloc mentality. Part of the reason I like doing these interviews is I get to learn a lot about the subject. I get to dive and kind of search around the internet and figure out what I can find out. So you're an amazing actress, but then you're also an accomplished writer and director. But if I'm going to take you to work tomorrow, if I'm going to say you can do anything you want, what would be your choice?
I vacillate, because some days I wake up and I'm like, I just want to be the female Hamlet on stage. That's all I want to do. And then sometimes I want to just be in my own, movie where I direct it and I'm acting in it and I have written it and all of that stuff, because I get to be the full taste maker. Like, I get to choose every single detail, and I feel like that makes it really cohesive as a story and everything. But then I love going in and doing something where, like with Peter Mullen's movie in Scotland, I just did Ned's and he directed me in it, and I was the actress in that and got to service this greater good of a story and a vision that was like so beautiful and essentially like ultimately beyond anything any other human being could have done. Like, Peter Mullen is such a genius. So I love working with directors like that who are smarter than me and know more and can guide the ship, in this really beautiful way. And I feel like such a different person in a way to my peers, because most of the people I work with are either just directors or just actors, and they have like one job. So it's a rarity that I find somebody to talk to who's doing everything like me. So I feel like I slot into all these different labels, or kind of I have different jobs all at once, and I don't know what that's about. I was talking about it last night with some friends, because I think that I can do the details really well of a project, but I can also see the whole thing at the same time. I can be kind of objective and subjective simultaneously, and I don't think other people, at least the people I've spoken to, do that, I don't know. I mean, there's like a handful of my friends who maybe are in the same boat as me, but they're also kind of, they see it in a different way. So it's just like been fascinating. And the older I get, the more amazed I am by what we're all accomplishing, because I feel like we're actually making some cool stuff and helping the world. I think that films have to help and theatre has to help society. You have to make the culture better, and you have to encourage people to feel like they're less alone than they were before they saw your work,
You having a hand in everything leads me to my next question, because you, my friend, are the queen of awesome titles. Tell me about the inspiration behind Bitch and Good Dick.
Well, okay, so with Good Dick, that was the first thing I ever wrote. Good Dick went to Sundance, and when I was writing it, before I wrote it, I read a statistic that 1 in 3 girls are sexually abused as children in America. 1 in 3. And I couldn't believe it. And I felt really frustrated by that statistic. And I was also dealing with a lot of really kind of silly auditions that all of my friends were forced to go on for characters that just didn't feel authentic to any human being that any of us were or have ever met. So we all wanted something deeper, I think. The male actors I knew and the female actresses I knew at the time, we all just needed something more. And so I wrote Good Dick out of that kind of sense of frustration and injustice. And then we made it, and I directed it, and I really was exploring intimacy and what it means for that character. So Good Dick was really like a positive question. It was kind of like a curiosity that we were kind of exploring, like what intimacy is and all of that stuff. So we kind of answered the question for us, saying that it's just the fact that this one character is persistent and there for the other, that the guy in that movie just happens to be Eros, the Cupid of the story. He's kind of like the persistent one who's just always there for her no matter what. And in a way, that's kind of what heals her. Not entirely. She can't be like completely healed, but she's at least a little bit better, which to us was like this great victory. So anyway, like, yeah, I really like the title of that film.
When I was reading through this stuff, I'm like, she is amazing. She is absolutely my hero, because I just can imagine you going and pitching these titles to just a room full of kind of pan-faced people. Like,
no, man.
What are we calling this again?
Yeah, like, what swear word are you coming up with now? Because I was like 24 when I made that film, and people were like, what? Before they saw it, and I was just talking about it. It's funny, you really just have a vision, and people have to just kind of go with it until you sort of prove yourself to yourself, and then other people sort of follow, But it was a really funny time, because at that time, we only had kind of like really bad romantic comedies that were not helping, the idea of love, or they weren't helping the concept of like being two people in a relationship that actually have issues or anything like that, you know? So it felt like some kind of revolution to make that movie. And similarly with Bitch, you know, I talked to Bryce Howard about Bitch because I told her the story that R.D. Lang had this woman. He was a doctor in Scotland, and he had this woman who became a dog, basically. She started behaving as if she was a dog, and it was just like such an amazing story. And I told her about it, and Bryce was like, "That's a movie." And I was like, "Bryce, no one's going to watch that film." And she was like, "No, Marianna, you should write the script." And so I went away to Lake Tahoe, and I wrote for 2 days, and I came back with the first draft. Because I had been inspired by Maya Angelou talking about the fact that she like goes to hotels and writes at hotels. I was like, if Maya is going to a hotel, I want to go to a hotel. So it was quite special because Bitch is definitely, you know, the most pro-humanist film. Like it's a very male positive movie because the male character in that film, like Bill, his name is Bill, and he really changes a lot. We get to see him go from being an utter asshole basically to suddenly getting like some compassion and figuring out his life and becoming the great father that he knows he can be and the great husband. And so it's a very forgiving movie in that sense, and it kind of is about the fact that you can be in a family that has different opinions about something and still you're together. It's sort of like the definition of the word complex, because complex is many opposing themes but together in one sort of tapestry, and that's to be distinguished from the word complicated, which is all these separate things never going to be together, you know, like you can have these opposing forces that just will never be together. And I feel like there are movies out there that are complicated, but I like to make complex films where the opposing elements are actually within one thing.
Well, you're in the entertainment business, and if you give people something to walk away and think about past, oh, that was really funny, or that building really blew up, I mean, to make people think, that is a higher form of entertainment.
I've been doing it forever, you know, I've been doing it since we've been telling stories around the fire or cave drawings and all that stuff. People need to be healed through stories, you know.
So unconventional titles aside, which can be really risky career choices, is this you drawing your line in the sand and saying, listen, I'm going to make it on my terms?
Yeah, you know, I was never going to do it any other way. I don't think it wasn't like I had an option, you know, like I wasn't like turning down all these like really conventional things. I just couldn't. It's almost like I couldn't help it. Like I couldn't do anything else except make stuff with my friends that I think is good. That's the only way I know how to do stuff. And then being employed for that fact, being employed because other people have seen it and seen my work, I feel like is really great too, because people know what they're getting with me. I feel like they know that I have a history of European cinema, you know, that my mom is a photographer and I'm coming in with like so much cinematic enthusiasm or something. I mean, I just care about the language of cinema so much. And I just did this film called Egg with Christina Hendrickson, Alicia Rayner and Anna Camp in New York. We shot it in New York last summer. And it was so great. And that's another level of cinematic for me, because I got to really do something that I've been waiting to do for a long time, and it felt so great to just have it down. You know, it feels so good to make a movie because you feel like you're putting your feelings about the world out there, you know, and your impressions of the world, and it's just really encouraging, you know. It feels like the best job in the world.
Well, and it's forever. Once you put this on film, these movies, you know, 100 years from now, somebody's going to find your films, they're going to hear your message, and it could start a movement. It could start a revolution. It could, you know, there's so many different ways that film and theater impact the world. So you get cast on Glow. Was it like being a new kid in school?
I read, I guess, that they were doing it or something like that. I heard that I actually asked the casting director if she had a new character, if there's any characters on Orange is the New Black. And the casting director was like, oh, you know, Jen Houston, she's actually out of New York. And she said, there's nothing on Orange is the New Black just now, but Genji's doing this new show called Glow that you should check out. And I read the pilot, and really struck me, the pilot was so incredible that I felt so compelled by it. I was so connected to it, and I felt like it was my show. It's really weird. I got like really possessive over it, and I was like, that's my TV show, that's mine, I'm going to be in it. And so I auditioned a bunch of times, and my niece helped me a lot. My niece was here visiting me for the summer, and she read the lines with me and stuff. And she's from Glasgow, and she was 15 then, and she's 16 now. And it was really funny because when I got the part, we were freaking out, and we ran into the ocean and stuff like that. And it was just really great. So we knew when we were doing season 1 that we were making something unique that no one else had done before, and we knew that we liked it, and we knew that the wrestling felt really real to us, and we were doing all of our own stunts, and we hoped that the wrestling world would accept us and all of that stuff. But we didn't know how the world would accept it as a whole, and we didn't know if our experience of it would translate to what you saw on screen. And thank goodness what happened, because we're in the best hands ever with Liz and Carly, who run the show. Like, we got to have our experience of what it was, and then that got to be translated to everyone in the whole world, like in 160 countries simultaneously. And having that level of like female empowerment impact the world at one time was like a hit that I can't even explain to you. It felt like getting a shot of adrenaline or something through all of our veins, because we really felt like we'd been working for something like that for our whole lives. And, you know, my mom loves it. My mom's generation loves it. And, you know, the kids love it. And it's just kind of it's an honor, really, to get to explore these women and the time period, and to show their, like, athleticism, but also their wisdom and everything that they were going up against, you know.
Well, you guys had to train pretty much as wrestlers, right? They brought in pro wrestlers to kind of help you out. What was that process like?
Well, Chavo Guerrero is basically the Oprah of wrestling. Like, he is the head of everything. He taught us, and his family meant basically, like, he has the guy who's always with him, Marty, was like with us, and also like made the rings and stuff like that, and like built the whole world for us. And so they were really, you know, detailed with us. Like, we trained every day, you know. It was like not a joke. And we had to do back bumps, front bumps, everything, you know, front 3/4 flips and the whole thing. And you end up kind of being a gymnast all of a sudden, but it's also not that, because you have to do it with a partner, and you have to make sure you don't kill anyone. So it's actually, you know, it's that you have to devote your life to someone, you know what I mean? Like, you have to just go, my body's your body, and also you have my neck, so don't break it, and I won't break yours. But you have to do it simultaneously, and you have to be really strong and aggressive, and then turn into like being completely submissive within a couple seconds of that, and go back to being aggressive. It's like a very unique skill. It's not like yoga or running or anything. You can't do it at the gym. Do you know what I mean? It's like you're throwing people around, using the full weight of your body, and it's wild. And so it was amazing. And then Shauna Duggins, who's the stunt genius, she's done so many things, and she helped us too, and Helena helped us as well. And they just got us into the mindset that we needed to be in, which actually is that we're invincible, you know. And so that, I think, helped us all in our own lives and in stuff. I mean, I already felt like I was empowered having directed 5 feature films and stuff like that, but now I really am empowered, you know.
Well, it's an interesting contrast, because I see your character, Reggie, kind of fitting you like a glove, because you come across to me like you're a warrior in real life. You know, you're a fighter. So to get cast in a role like this had to be like hand in glove for you.
Yeah, it was, you know, and it felt like hand in glove. It felt like a meeting of exactly what I've been doing my whole life, and what I've been wanting to do my whole life. This kind of TV show, these kind of characters, showing women in a way that isn't male gaze, you know, that's female gaze as much as possible. Showing women who aren't just white, you know, like showing everybody together as much as possible. We can't get enough of that right now. Like, I really want to see, you know, real characters. I want to see everyone I know who are like my friends. I want to see those people on the screen. I want to see their stories. And I think it makes the country better, and it makes the world better. And I just dig it. I feel like the warrior aspect is true. I feel like the superhero feeling is true. And it's also a very seductive thing to do, because after you are done with a wrestling match, because we're not just doing, you know, a 20-minute show. Like, the wrestlers I know are going out there and they're doing like a 20-minute show, you know. They're not doing it for 12 hours a day for 5 days or 6 days a week like we are. And they're not having to do it for a million different cameras. Like, our job is so specific doing your own stunts as an actress on Glow, I mean, the only people who really know what it feels like are the 14 other women who I'm doing it with. And so it's hard to explain the amount of adrenaline, and it's hard to explain the way you feel, because you feel like you can fly. So then when you're done, you have to kind of, Chavo talks to us about after the match and stuff, or after you are done, you have to kind of like figure out a way to be a human being again. You have to come back to earth a little bit. And it's just very weird, like after a match, to just go get a cup of coffee and, and walk down the street and stuff, because you're like, but I was just in another world, you know?
And it's done real well. I mean, I grew up on wrestling. I watched wrestling pretty much my whole teenage years, and it's believable. Have you done anything this hands-on or physically demanding in your career?
You know, I don't know. Like, I did this movie Restive in Texas. The whole time we shot that film, I just ran, because the movie's about my character running. And I was so excited to be able to be physical in that film. And I think that when you do a play, you just have to be physical. You have to be in your body. You know, we did a lot of Suzuki training when I was in Atlantic in New York, and I felt the voice training that we did there was really key. And it's nice to have all of that stuff kind of fill in and flow into Glow. It's an interesting thing where you have to like throw your voice while you're moving around, and you have to be able to be theatrical while you're moving, and all of that's theater, you know. But I love it, because when Chavo first saw our pain faces, he was like, you guys are keeping it really real. You need to make a real, you have to go further. And we were like, but we're theater actresses, like we know what huge faces, you know. And he was like, no, wrestling's bigger than whatever you guys are calling theater, you know. Like, we were like, oh right, it's even more theatrical than our wildest dreams. And it was so fun, you know. Was
any of the cast hurt during any of the matches or the training?
Well, I think that we've all sort of died in our minds, like in the most scared parts of us. We have already been completely injured and we're out of the game. Like, I think that in order to just do it, you kind of have to go through the fear. And I think that, you know, we've all sort of like imagined the worst. Luckily, there hasn't been anything like hugely terrible yet. Touch wood, like people have certainly been on the edge of danger the entire time we're doing it, and that's just what wrestling is, and you kind of have to, you know, accept that. But it feels like we're all in it together in this way, that genuinely, like if one person is hurt and I see them being hurt, it feels like we're all hurt, or it feels like I've been hurt. It's a really strange connection, you know. It feels like we were all in a war together or something like that.
So your character was sidelined kind of early in the season for taking a stand defending Ruth's honor to Sam, which I was really proud of her for. And we don't see her again until way later in the season. Were you slightly disappointed that this amazing character didn't get seen maybe just a little bit more, maybe a little more screen time?
I actually really love it because it's so dramatic. I think it's really important, for a boomerang to come back, you have to throw it away, you know? It's sort of like a writer's truth, you know. You kind of have to, you can't be like, oh, let's take something away half or a little bit, you know. You have to just actually remove it in order for it to return. So I feel like I loved it. I don't know, like I'm a sucker for drama and I love it, you know.
So outside of your own character, of course, who's always going to be your favorite, who are some of the other characters that you enjoy in the show?
Whoa, I feel like Reggie, I don't know if Reggie's my favorite character. I feel like I love all the characters equally. I'm like such a pacifist in real life, and also like, you know, a diplomat. I feel like they are all amazing. I remember meeting them all and just loving them instantly as actresses, and then when I saw their characters, just falling in love with them even more. And it's such a stunning show for that reason. I feel like we're all giving each other props, and we all feel like we do anything for each other. And when you have 14 people simultaneously being there for other people before they're there for themselves, I think it's really, really profound and potent and moving and next level.
Well, the show is full of strong female characters. It's the very definition of feminism, in my opinion. I mean, not only with their fists, their words, their actions. Do you think a show like Glow would have been possible 5 years ago, or is this a reflection of where we're at in society.
I think a show like Glow was required. It was necessary 5 years ago. Like, it's always been necessary and needed. But I think that the timing is perfect because it was just supposed to happen now. And I agree with you. I don't even think it could have come on a year before it came on. I think it was pioneering in the sense that the people who created it were such visionaries and had such a clear idea of what they wanted it to be. And when you do that and you have such clear intentions, it really helps everyone, because then you make something that's really cohesive and cogent, you know, and it's a real joy to watch, and it's a real joy to be part of.
From Claire Underwood to Eleven to Jessica Jones to now Reggie Walsh. I mean, has Netflix become the center of the women's movement?
It's the center of, like, humans, you know, like, I feel like it's really great for guys too. Like, I think that the best, you know, the definition for me of feminism is humanism. It includes men as well. I think that my favorite feminists are the guys I know who are way more hardcore feminists than any of the women who I know. And I love that the people who are at Netflix are capable of seeing characters that are interesting and identifying that, whether they're male or female, and putting that out there. I think it's really good for the entire world, like I said. And I think that it brings everybody together, you know, and it does have an impact, and it changes the way that kids, boys and girls, and everyone in between, it changes the way that they think about what they are and what they're capable of. And I think that makes a difference in the future for sure, you know.
Well, I watched the original show growing up, so I've been an advocate for it since I saw the first episode. I was like, wow, this is a neat idea, and the fact that they had Marc Maron involved, I loved. Yeah. And because, you know, Marc Maron is basically playing Marc Maron, which he's just a great personality. But I was surprised at the reception from men, where it was more like, oh, it's a show about girls. It's really not. It transcends that. And I love that about it. And, I will advocate for the show forever, as many seasons as it goes. The season ended with you guys on a bus, new hope, new beginnings. The cast and crew are headed to Vegas. Do you think your character will be back for season 3? And where do you see the show going from here?
Oh, wow. You know, I'm not quite sure, like, where it's going to go. That's the thing. Like, we don't know anything about where it's going. And I feel like it's great, because I feel like we're not supposed to. I feel like the reason it's so amazing is for that very reason. Like, we've never known where it was going to go, and we've never been able to plan based off of that, you know, like and we're kind of in it with the fans and the audience as much as the process has kind of enlightened us and stuff. Seeing it all come to fruition, it feels like those story elements are just something that they're never going to tell us, which is as it should be. But I also think that it's such an organic experience to just to give ourselves over to what those women actually did, you know, because they were such pioneers in the 80s. And I love that you watched the actual show, because I didn't actually see the original Glow, you know. Like, I watched it for research when I read the script, but it wasn't like I had an idea of it in my head, and I thought it was so wild, you know. And the fact that they were doing that back then, and that they had these like real weapons and stuff, it's so like gory and intense.
It was violence and big hair, that's for sure.
What a combo, you know. I love it. And the 80s is my iconography. I mean, like you, I grew up, you know, watching that kind of era, you know. I mean, I was born in 81, so I had this real understanding of what the 80s was, and a real nostalgic feeling when I would think about it, and a connection to it, and a connection to that big hair and everything like that. I just love that we get to see the characters growing, and we get to explore where they're going to go in the time that we're supposed to do it. It feels like there's stuff going on for each of us as actresses in our own life that mirrors what's going on for our characters. Or, you know, I feel like the writers, through no planning of their own, actually have just like really helped us a lot as women. And so, yeah, it's been quite a ride, you know. Glow's amazing.
IMDb knows all, and they have you starring in a project with James Franco called Rose for Emily. What can you
Yeah.
tell us about it, and what was it like working with James?
Well, that was a riot because A Rose Family is my favorite Faulkner book. It's like a really great story about, well, you should watch the film, but it's really kind of a gothic feminist tale. And it's kind of punk rock, even though it's set back in the day. And they asked me to do it, and I was like, that's my favorite Faulkner. You guys don't even understand. And he was producing it, and James is a great producer, and it was really fun to act with him and be Southern. And I was like in a corset, and it was hilarious. And we would like do these like little improvs. I had just seen This Is the End, so I was like quoting This Is the End to James, and all of his lines from This Is the End, and like laughing with him about it. But I was in a corset, and it was like the funniest. It's like the weirdest thing in the world to have like this modern dialogue coming out of like my mouth, when actually I was like this Victorian woman. But it's also really funny that we got to connect so much, and we ended up really delving into like the physicality of what happened to them as characters, and it got really genuinely physical. And we kind of had to do this sex scene that wasn't really gratuitous or anything like that. It was very tame, but it was really difficult because I was in a corset, and it immediately got hilarious because I couldn't actually move. Like he had to sort of like lift me. I was like a dead tree or something. Like he had to like lift me with his arms. Like my whole body had to like kind of lift me up, and it really made me think about the women in that time period, and the fact that when you're in a corset, all your organs are being crushed, and you kind of are not really getting air to your brain. So you kind of develop this personality that's sort of like, yeah, whatever, I don't care, I don't mind about anything, like, you know, take away my rights, I'm not thinking about it. You cultivate a sort of indifference because you can't even breathe. Like the director would be like, Marianna, what do you think we should do? And I'd be like, you know, whatever you guys want to do. Like I wasn't really giving my opinion about stuff because I was, you know, stuck in this corset. And I just found that whole experience really funny, and I think that movie is great. Like it's so incredible, and it was incredible to see Carson Leota, who's just a dream actress. She kind of looks like my niece. Like she looks like my family basically. Like we all look really similar. She played like the younger version of my character, and it was just really special, and we had a riot. It was a real fun time shooting that.
If I was to recommend one of your projects to my listeners, which one would you recommend? Which one is your favorite by far?
Whoa, tough question, because
I know.
It's like saying like, which dog do you love the best, and who's your favorite child that you gave birth to? I'm like, all of them. I don't know. I feel like Bitch is probably the thing that people could watch and get a sense of what we're all trying to do over here, you know. I mean, I feel like that's, you know, family friendly and everything, so it's fun for the whole family. Bitch. And I think that Ned's is really incredible, just in terms of Scottish history and the history of gang violence in Scotland and stuff like that. I love that movie. Yeah, it's hard because I've always said yes to stuff that I want to do and that I really like and I think is within my taste. So it's really difficult to pick a favorite because I haven't really had like an experience where I was like, oh, that was a crap movie, or that turned out to be bad, or I never ended up doing the performance that I thought was worthy of it or whatever. Like I actually have always been like, that's good, you know, like that feels good about everything. So like I think I'm lucky in that way because I've actually talked to other actors who feel the opposite, where they feel like they've never been in anything that was worthy of them, or where they felt like they got to do everything that they could have.
I follow you on social media, and you are a great follow. Very interesting, very informative. Where can everyone else find you on the internets?
Oh, well, yeah, like Marianna Palka is my Twitter and my Instagram and everything. And yeah, I was just talking about the virtues of Instagram the other night because I was in New Orleans, and there was so much real stuff going on there. And I felt like, you know, I was just talking about the fact that actually when you have the ability to put pictures online, it feels kind of beautiful to be able to show, you know, that, oh, here we are and we've all been doing this for so long. It's like a family album or something. It's just so nice to get to look back and be really proud of how far we've all come as a community, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, it really is great to kind of reflect on where you were at that time. Facebook does the same too, where they they'll show you where you were a year ago, and it's nice to reminisce, and it's nice to see your progress forward, as far as your career or with my show. And I love social media because without it, I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't have the ability to contact people such as yourself and sit down and have a fantastic conversation like we did.
I know, and we were talking from across the country. That's amazing too.
It really is. I mean, technology makes it harder sometimes, but it also makes it a lot easier. I appreciate you being on. You are my hero. I absolutely
you're my hero, man.
I will follow your career intently, and whenever you have anything to promote, any new project, feel free to come back and sit down with us. I will talk to you every single day of the week.
Good. I'll talk to you too, because I will, I'll be back. Like, you can count on it. I'm coming back.
Oh, a feminist, an actress, a director, a writer, a tour de force. Marianna Palka, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. The first season ended with the match heard around the world, as Liberty belled to beat Zoya for the crown. And the ladies have pulled it off. They're professional wrestlers. But as fans, we know there is no such thing as a happy ending in professional wrestling. IG, your personality is very similar to mine. Sam and Ruth are both interesting but very contrasting characters, and they spend most of the season at odds with each other. Ruth being the happy to be there gal, and Sam being I'd rather be any place but here guy. Which one would you rather be trapped in an elevator with, and why?
Oh, well, it's always fun to kind of be around those bubbly girls. I don't know why, but they just tend to be fun to be around. But really, probably Sam, because, we're just going to get through this. After it all, it's still work, and I don't want to spend my whole life at work. I spend enough time at places that are treating me pretty well, and I still want to get out of there at the end of the day. So, anything you got to deal with in this situation is going to be Sam, because it's like, well, let's get it done and move on to the next thing, versus trying to drag everything out, which is what it seems like she's trying to do, is just drag it out.
Yeah, Ruth is going to try to make being trapped in an elevator fun, and it's not going to be. You're eventually going to start to stink. It's going to get small. She's going to want to do a sing-along, and you're eventually going to want to John McClane it right out of the top of the elevator. Hey, Ryan, who would you rather be in an elevator with? Somebody just disgruntled, or somebody that is just going to Zoloft past everything that's going on?
It's always a tough one. I would say Sam, only because he's hilarious, and at worst you'll say something just ridiculous in his bitterness, and maybe I'll score some Coke while I'm at it.
Oh, hey,
there is nothing wrong with that. Maybe he'll have Coke on him, and it will be a good time. Ryan, there's a big difference between making it and keeping it. And the new season brings a new set of challenges for the ladies. Finding an audience, being given terrible contracts, even being sexually harassed and deported. Were the struggles in the new second season as compelling as the first?
Yeah, I think more so. I think that in a weird way, it felt a little bit less over the top, but the writing almost seemed more focused. Story was really interesting because they were able to address a lot of these kind of cultural issues that right now we highlight as being problematic, but at the time weren't. And they wrote it in a way that fits the story, fits the time, but there's also acknowledging that it's a problem. And it's not really done with a wink and a nod, but it's done in a way that, it's made clear and we're aware of it, but again, it doesn't feel like it's kind of being slammed in our face. So I really, I think that this season, I think did a really great job of kind of writing things in so they kind of felt real and part of the script, but again, was still acknowledging kind of how things, have changed over time.
Well, while the plot wasn't as in your face and exciting in this second season, it was more insightful, and I really enjoyed it for that because, these are problems that have existed in the world for a long time, and I can fully believe that these characters reacted in the ways that they did. Especially Ruth, when she was kind of brought to that hotel and kind of pressured into, let's have a good time and we'll keep your show going. I can believe that somebody would freak out and try and run out of there, even in the 80s when, the thought was it's almost common practice to give into that to get what you want. I liked how it was more subtle and it was more thoughtful in a lot of things. You had Sam and his relationship with his daughter in this one. That was a great storyline that was going on with all of this. I mean, there was just so many things that took a show that was kind of right in your face. They backed off a little bit, but they backed off in such a way that it was still driving and wanted you to keep you going from episode to episode. And luckily the episodes are short, so you can really, like, I binged it like really fast, like in an evening, because it was just, I wanted to see the next one and the next one and the next one. It's one thing I love about Netflix, man. You guys just keep giving it to us that way. That's great.
And I know it's more of a comedy in parts, and they do mix in some drama, but sometimes the half-hour runtime seems a little short for the show. It's like I'm just getting into it, and then we're into the next episode, and before we know it, they've only done 10 episodes, so the season's over. Sometimes a half hour is right at the mark, and sometimes I would like a little bit more. You're right, because you wait all year for this, and you could literally binge it in 5 hours. You know, the better part of a day, and you've already watched the whole season. IG, the crew heads to the mall to shoot an opening, complete with a music montage and blockbuster ads. Did the second season capture the era like the first did? And did it make you nostalgic for the 80s?
You know, that's one of the things that I really love about the show. I mean, between the music and the huge hair and everything else, I mean, it embodies the 80s. And yeah, it makes me nostalgic. I mean, it's got to be that there's people of our ages that like watch this and they're just happy because we remember being like that, where the mall was the biggest thing in the world, and the hair was the only thing that was even close to as big as the mall, and the music was just iconic because it's still big today, a lot of that music, and it just kind of drives you. So yeah, I was super nostalgic listening to everything in this and watching it, and you know, they hit it right. I mean, there's places I've seen some other shows that tried to emulate this kind of thing, and I think they don't understand what the 80s were and what the 80s were about, and they hit it on the mark with this.
Well, it's really become Netflix's wheelhouse. They have this 80s genre locked down as far as the way they shoot it, the way it looks, the way the music is. How about you, Ryan? Did you miss the 80s? Did you wish you had a little bit bigger hair and some Aquanet?
You know, not really. I think the, you know, what the show does, the kind of aesthetic, especially when they did the montage to begin the show, it does bring you back to that time and even to watching pro wrestling at the time. So, you know, you definitely get a little nostalgic, but I'm a little bit younger than you guys. I think my memory of the 80s is not as kind of clear, and especially of kind of the kind of pop culture of the time is not as clear. But yeah, no, it definitely brings out a bit of the nostalgic piece, and you definitely remember that kind of aesthetic and feel for TV.
Well, and they use such recognizable music too. You know, they don't spare in the music, which really helps. I mean, they got an old looking mall, so that was kind of cool. I really kind of dug that whole part of that episode where they did that, because it was ridiculous and it was, you know, very corny, but it was a lot of fun. I found myself enjoying and looking for things that I did remember from my childhood. Ryan, they teased Russell the camera guy and Bruce the relationship pretty much all season till the very end. Did it work for you, or do you think that she should have ended up with Sam?
I'm going to say both. I'm going to cheat a little bit. I wanted her to end up with Sam, but I'm glad that they didn't do that, because it definitely, you know, kind of the cliche or the trope is usually that, or what would normally happen is, yeah, like the camera guy is just kind of like the guy there, good looking, you know, shows interest, but he's just really there to be an obstacle for her to get to Sam. And so I am glad that they didn't go that route, and that she did end up with him, because, you know, my expectation was, of course she's going to end up with Sam. That's just how they write these shows. So I'm glad that I was wrong.
Well, Russell's the cutie, right? You know, but Sam's the one with the money. It's a throw up for any modern girl. So I don't know. I think Russell's intentions are more pure, I guess. You know, Sam seems like he's always got something else at mind, and maybe it's just because he is always wheeling and dealing in some way or another, at least in this show. But, you know, they both have some charisma about them, which I really enjoyed. But I think, you know, to stay like being a little bit formulaic is great, but being completely formulaic is troublesome. And I like that they kind of went against the formula with this thing. So it was a better choice, I think, to go with Russell.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think it's going to be more of a long-lasting and carryover storyline. I'm not sure the name of the actor that played Russell, but I thought he did a really good job. Sam, it seemed almost like a crime of opportunity. Like, all right, you broke me down, you're here, so I guess you're good enough for right now. and they're in two different spots in their life, so I think Russell was a better choice. A carryover storyline from last season was the fallout of Ruth sleeping with Debbie's husband. She goes as far to sabotage her dates with Russell and even hurts her in the ring. IG, would you be able to work with someone that did that to you? I mean, could you ever forgive them and continue a professional relationship after they slept with your significant other?
Yeah, that'd be rough. And that's one of the issues that, when you kind of run in the same circles, is those things might present themselves as problems. But, it's funny that, this is one of the things that I've seen happen even in the real world, where I think the anger from somebody is misdirected, because while Ruth did sleep with her husband did sleep with Ruth. Why isn't she equally as vengeful against her husband? And it doesn't seem like she is. Like she's a little bit mad and a little bit vengeful, but not to the point where she's going to break his leg, which is exactly what she does to Ruth. She breaks her leg. I don't know. I couldn't continue to work in that situation. I might leave, but she also didn't sign the original contract and went and got a better one and got them to agree to it. So, I mean, she's an apt businesswoman as well. So she's making decisions that's putting her in a place that she can maybe make some real money out of this. But it's still, do you really want to be with somebody who reminds you of some of the worst times of your life every day? Because that's what she's doing to herself. So I don't know. It's a little bit of a catch-22. That do you really want to be there, but do you want to give up this opportunity? Because nothing else was really banging down her door at the moment either.
Ryan, your sparring partner in Jits did you dirty, but you're still rolling together. Would you crank back on that arm bar just a little bit harder, knowing that he might have slept with your wife?
Yeah, I don't know how you don't do that. I think that's a problem. Like I certainly would. It would have to be the job of a lifetime, something that I absolutely couldn't refuse and would set me for life to ever work in a situation like that. I just wouldn't be able to do it. I wouldn't trust the person. I wouldn't want to be around them. And I certainly, if there was a chance to crank it or, whatever the case is, I would go for it, because I just don't think I would be able to get over that.
Well, I know that Rick James said several times on Dave Chappelle, cocaine is a hell of a drug. I wouldn't need cocaine to rock back on that arm bar. I mean, oops, sorry about that, but maybe you should have kept it in your pants and then you wouldn't be going to see an orthopedist for the next 6 months. IG, Justine and Billy's relationship had its ups and downs during the second season. But is there a better name for a band than the Shit Popes?
I did like the name and the fact that she was managing the merch and making t-shirts and everything, and just kind of would hang on to it regardless of how badly that he was treating her. That is more true than it probably should be, because those chicks that hang on to those bands and musicians will let them get away with bloody murder. But if it was said if somebody said Shit Popes on Park and Recreation, I guarantee you that Andy Dwyer would go, I call it band name. I call it couldn't be. I mean, Mouse Rat is a close second, but still Shit Pope is way better than Mouse Rat.
Sam is kind of a grumpy old fuck, a drunk, coked up at times, but he seems to be a good dad to Justine, basically telling her a guy won't define you and you need to forge your own path. Ryan, would you give your stepdaughter similar counsel?
Yeah, I would. And actually, I do think, I think there's a part of him that does feel like a failure. And I joke about it when I talk about the show that, it's Marc Maron. He's great in it, but he's basically playing Marc Maron. But there is a nuance to his performance that's actually really, really good. And so I think that, there's that part that kind of feels like a failure in certain ways. And, and he's a drunk. He's a drug addict. He's misogynist. He treats people like shit. And here he's given this opportunity to actually be a good person and showcase the good side of him. And I think that deep down, he does have a warm heart. And so we see him struggle with kind of extracting that and kind of cultivating that, and he has a really hard time with it. But I think he does a great job kind of portraying somebody who is trying to be a good dad. And so I think that's one of my favorite kind of aspects of this season is him trying to be that person for her.
Well, it's basically an experience thing. I mean, he's trudged his own paths, and I'm sure he's been in his own share of bad relationships. But IG, I think you've even given your daughter similar advice, have you not?
Oh, absolutely, I have. I mean, everybody seems to think that, especially when you're, in your late teens and early 20s, that you're fully aware of how the world works. And the truth is, from my own experience, because when I was in my late teens and early 20s, I thought I knew everything. And come to find out, I really didn't know shit. And I keep trying to preach that to my oldest daughter, who's in her mid-20s now and still having some trouble. But she's starting to listen a little bit more. But I've been making that effort as a parent that loves her for all of this time. I'm not going to stop. And that's what I liked about Mark, is that he continued to make the effort. And he had his momentary blow-ups, but if you've been a parent, you've had your momentary blow-up where, you basically scream, "I hate you too." And then you come back, "I don't really hate you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that." It's an interesting dynamic, and it's actually written very well. So, I mean, while Mark Maron is playing Mark Maron, I think, concerned parent and somebody who loves his daughter is something that is played pretty naturally in this show. I really do enjoy that aspect.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised myself how good he was at it for somebody that is barely managing their own life. That, I want you to go to school. I want you to have a curfew. I want you to have a life of your own. I want you to be your own person. I mean, these are all very solid messages where he kind of runs his life where you wouldn't think that he would actually care. Like, all right, live and let live. I'm having a party, you're having a party. It's all good. Where he actually got through to her a little more than her mom, who showed up later in the season. And if it wasn't for him, she definitely would have ran off to New York and screwed up the rest of her life. Yeah, hats off to Sam. Probably a pretty bad person, but a very good father. Ryan, I asked Marianna Palka today the same question I'm about to ask you. From Claire Underwood to Eleven to Piper Chapman to the ladies at Glow, has Netflix become the center of the women's movement?
Yeah, so I think Netflix has done a really, really smart thing. And this goes back to, I think, a larger issue that we're seeing now in Hollywood and just in media, is that, when you're writing shows, you're the people on the back end, the writers, the directors, the people in the writing room, they should be writing from the perspective of they always should, but it helps to write from the perspective of the characters. So if you're writing a show about women or largely a group of women, you should have women in the writer's room. You should have female directors. It just makes sense. If you're writing, whatever that perspective is, you try to have that. It doesn't always have to work that way, but it certainly helps. So I think that we're getting a lot more diversity and different voices, and Netflix has really kind of spearheaded that. And I think that's where we're seeing the kind of quality, because I think we're just seeing things written from a perspective that we're not used to. And so I think that it's great, and I really applaud Netflix on that. And I think that's why many of their shows have been so successful.
Yeah, I agree. You can't argue with the results, and the results are that they've given women a solid platform from every walk of life to stand on and be heard. And I would encourage every guy I know to sit down and watch Glow, and not for the stereotypical sexual reasons, but for the fact that they've produced good content. You have 14 very individual female personalities who are strong and have a voice and have a message and are really enjoyable. I mean, they've done a good job where there's not overlapping personalities. Everybody is slightly different in their own way, and they're all very enjoyable characters. Like, any one of them really could be the lead of the show, and they've done enough character development now where we feel like we all know them personally.
I think you hit it right on the head, and that's the thing, is there's enough interpersonal development in everything there that, while they're all different, their stories intertwine in such a way that it makes it a more beautiful thing. Like, it's fun to watch because all of them are different, but all of them have similar goals. They're all trying to get to kind of the same place. So their journey to get there is going to be different. And it's interesting to watch that you can see different paths that these women are taking and the different struggles they're having even in their personal life as these go on. And the writing of how they do it, I mean, the dialogue is strong in this show. The acting is superior to many things that are out there right now. It's not Game of Thrones level, but it's pretty good. I mean, they really couldn't have cast a better group of women on this. I mean, it is really very strong. And like, from top of the cast list all the way to the bottom, they've got a great thing going. And I really hope that they do like many more seasons, because you know what, there's a lot of stuff here for them to hit.
One of my big pet peeves is I work in a pretty male dominated job, and they're always talking about, well, why do you watch this show? Why do you watch that show? Oh, because she's hot. And that's the same with The Walking Dead. Daryl's hot. Carol's hot. I don't watch shows based on how the cast look. I watch shows for the content. I mean, it's not a beauty pageant. It's, your storytelling. And the looks of the character doesn't necessarily matter to how the story is told. It drives me batty that you'll sit through bad programming because there's an attractive person on TV. It turns my brain to oatmeal to think that somebody would sit through Dawson's Creek because they liked one of the actors. It's nonsense. It shows a huge level of immaturity.
Yeah, one of my favorite characters on this is Sheila the She-Wolf. And while the actress herself is pretty good looking, the character she's portraying is really kind of almost off-putting, but she's so much fun to watch that, I'm not watching this for hot girls. I'm watching this because it's compelling content. So I appreciate Netflix for that wholly.
Yeah. They went for a cast of various different looking people and it all works and you root for them all. It's just a great collaboration of talent and athleticism, and I really enjoy the show a lot. But Ryan, the ladies were put in a position where they had to compete for airtime, which led to backstabbing, gimmick stealing, and general strife. And they worked as a team real well last season, but is there anything more destructive to a team morale than putting them in competition with each other?
You can be in competition to kind of make each other better. I mean, that's how it works in the real pro wrestling. They're all the competition isn't in the ring, but the competition is your gimmicks and putting on good matches and getting the fan base riled up. And so you need that type of competition to keep people getting better. But I think there needed to be kind of a driving force or kind of a leader to kind of rally them around and really help them, help guide them through that so that they weren't stealing from each other and that they're not, that they're kind of getting better as a team and as a group. And so I don't think they quite had that leadership. And so then that made it kind of more of, okay, well, I'm going to steal your thing. I'm going to take this and kind of created more tension and conflict, which, at the end of the day, you need that tension and conflict. So it kind of worked from a storytelling perspective. But yeah, I think you do need that leader to I'm in a field with personal training where you're part of a team. But at the same time, you're all competitive with each other because you each want to get that client. So there has to be this balance of working with each other, working well together, referring out when you need to, but it can be cutthroat. And so I've been in situations where you have the right kind of leader that rallies everyone around them and kind of you make everyone want to grow as a team and get better as a team. And then I've been in situations where you don't have that. And yeah, it's cutthroat and people are stabbing each other in the back, talking crap about each other. So just even personally, I've kind of experienced that. And you need that person to kind of guide you through to really help the team grow.
IG, from the files of eventually Me Too, Ruth gets called to the hotel to talk to the network president about her career. Notice the quotation marks there. Number one, were you completely creeped out of your skin by that guy? And number two, would you have handled it the same way she did?
Well, number one, yeah, that dude was creepy as all get out. The suave method by which he was walking around like this is old hat made me even more creeped out because it seems like this is something he's done repeatedly to great effect. And he was just so comfortable in that moment that, like, in my younger days, even going up in a place and asking a girl how she was made me uncomfortable. And this guy was basically taking his pants off in front of her and was like, this is normal. There's probably two ways I might have handled it. One would have been exactly the way Ruth did, where you just, get out of Dodge. And the other one might have been to try and find a way to publicly embarrass him, like, get him hurt to the point where he's got to go to a hospital and then try and get the news there to cover the story. But maybe that's, 2000s thinking of me instead of 1980s, because I know that these things were happening then, but they weren't as widely reported. There was no Me Too movement in the 80s because there was no Twitter, Facebook, and speedy and expedient ways for people to get their stories out, which is unfortunate. I mean, thank God for technology and its movement forward, because now, like, people can actually see some of the bad things that have happened to bring us things that people are in love with, and some of the evil things that people have done to try and move their careers forward. So I'm glad that they brought that up in this show, because I know these are things that were happening. But man, I'd have had to try and find a way to at least kick him in the jimmy. I mean, were I Ruth. But yeah, he was creepy as all hell.
I don't understand this way of thinking. And Ryan, you brought this up before, because this is stuff that we're still dealing with in modern day, but they kind of put the 1980s spin on it. And I don't understand the way of thinking of men where they just go up and they grope a woman or just say crude things to him. Or that guy, even, he's like, hey, I'm going to go run a bath. I don't know you. I don't know your name, but you're going to go get in the bath with me. I don't understand that way of thinking. It really bothered me to the sense that this has probably been going on since there's been a Hollywood, probably only just recently stopped because of the whole Me Too thing. And it might still be going on. What interests me is if I could sit down the whole cast and poll them, I bet you that out of the 14 women on the show, probably a good deal of them had this happen to them at one point in time. And I wonder how they reacted themselves in real life. It's a bad position to be in because this is your job. And I can't imagine conditions being put on my job that I physically and sexually have to do things that I don't want to do to keep it or move forward in it. I'm really proud that Ruth didn't stay, and it might have cost them in the end, and we'll go someplace else with the story, but I'm glad for her own self-worth that she didn't stay and she did the right thing and got the hell out of there. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, again, that was one of those instances where it shows, a completely different time. When you look at some of the accusations against Weinstein and some of the other things that are coming up, clearly very similar things are still happening, to this day. And I think we're only at a point now where we've kind of really turned a corner. I think it was just so commonplace that if you were a male in a position of power and you have this vulnerable, actress who's trying to get by, you can do that and you can get away with it because there were really no consequences for that. And that was one of the harder scenes, really to watch because of how real I'm sure it was. And just how, I'm sure any actress at that time had to have been propositioned in that way. And I'm sure it still happens today. So I think that was a very, tough and real scene. And I think it was she plays it really well. I don't know the guy's name, but the actor also plays it really well. He does he's so sleazy and disgusting and is so confident in it that it's almost as it's like he's done this many times and he's been successful, like as you said. And so I think it is really well played. And yeah, just I've never been in a situation like that. You really could feel the pain and the frustration and that kind of anxiety in that moment of like, what do I do? How do I get out of this? And that kind of fear. So I think it really worked well, as tough as it was to watch.
Yeah, it was some great acting, and it really showed the necessity of this whole Me Too movement. It really showed that these women don't need to be subjugated to this and that they need a voice. I can't lie, that was uncomfortable, but the next scene was as uncomfortable to me. It was the welfare queen taking her Sanford attending son to work day for a match. Ryan, what were your thoughts on that scene, and how do you think her son handled it in the end?
I wish we got a little bit more of their background and, of his own thoughts on what was going on. So kind of you see her character is clearly like just a massive stereotype of the time, right? And so but you see that she's not that person. She and her son isn't at Stanford, so his son has a great trajectory. So I would have liked to have known a little bit more of their background because it would have added another layer to his own reaction. Like, did they struggle? Were they going through poverty? Were they in a situation where he hated, he grew up in a middle class neighborhood and dealt with people that treated him poorly, and so to see his mom perpetuating this idea really could be hurtful to him. So I really wanted more background on that. That would have sold his reaction a little bit better to me, but it's still tough to watch because here you're watching somebody who clearly that's not his mom, and he has no idea, and his mom's playing the stereotype. So even without the background, you can still feel that this is really uncomfortable, and he had no time to react to it. It was definitely uncomfortable. I don't think it was quite as uncomfortable as the previous scene, but it's definitely tough to watch, and you can kind of feel his kind of own anguish and just weirdness and discomfort that he must be going through for that entire kind of day.
How about you, IG? I mean, were you happy for him ultimately he saw through it and said, this is my mom and she's doing what she has to do, and he kind of stood by her, even took her out to dinner afterwards?
Yeah, I was happy that it ended up that way, because while I was watching her scene while she was wrestling, every time she kind of looked over at him in the stands, it looked like his heart was breaking, and I was feeling so bad for him in the moment. And I was even thinking to myself, it's like, this is a job. She's acting, not every role when you're acting is going to put you in the limelight like you're the greatest person in the world. I mean, we've seen some of our great actors turn into putting in the quote unquote bad guy persona in movies that end up they're great. I mean, if you look at even like DiCaprio in Django Unchained, his portrayal of Candy in that was amazing, and he's the bad guy. So sometimes it's okay to put on a stereotype and be the bad guy, and I think that he kind of came to that on his own, which was great, because you know what? Her character, although it's a complete stereotype and it's almost an awful stereotype, it's entertaining to watch. And really all wrestling has ever been was try and like emphasize these weird characters that have these strange stereotypes and make it entertaining to watch. And I think that he accepted that and then was like, you know, you did a great job, as it's something that I would generally loathe, but it was fun to watch. You got to admit it.
Cupcake lands the woman of his dreams, even if it is for a green card marriage, only to have Bash, that motherfucker, swoop in and steal her out from under him. Ryan, did you feel a little bad for the poor little fella?
Not really. It's like
So says the good-looking guy, right, IG? Yeah, I mean, I would have done the same thing. Fuck that kid.
It would have ended poorly for him. Yeah.
Bash George over here.
It would have ended poorly for him anyways. I think I don't think, I think it was good that it ended then, rather than he be devastated down the road. Well, maybe being married to her for a little bit would have been probably the peak of his life, so maybe it would have been worth it to deal with whatever heartbreak he'd go through. But yeah, I feel like better to end it now and then to deal with and her to deal with her being kind of bitter and angry that she's got to be married to this weird obsessive cupcake guy for a few years to get a green card.
Well, dude, your name is Cupcake. I don't know how you get that name unless you're like a master baker and you're French and you've just transcended cupcakes. But the poor guy, there wasn't even social media around for him to post pictures and everybody to call him a liar. Like, hey, here's me and my wife. They're like, you're completely lying. After the show was doomed, they decided to show some personality and they went to doing vignettes. Did you enjoy, IG, the character development from those little skits?
I did. And I mean, it's really kind of shaped. I mean, if you look at it, I mean, that 90% of most wrestling shows today are vignettes. They're acting. They're like standing in the ring with a microphone instead of actually throwing each other around. And it's probably better for the wrestlers themselves because they're not spending every night, day after day, beating each other up, so that extends their careers. But it also kind of gives the people that are watching the show that soap opera to watch, because basically wrestling is just an ongoing soap opera. It's a blast, and you gotta admire that they saw that they could do that. And I mean, that really gave Ruth a second life, and it also helped the show turn a new corner, like get a new head of steam heading somewhere, because I think Ruth's character as that mad Russian in this show really was kind of driving Glow in general, because it was, the Russian against the American. And in the 80s, that was the biggest fight there could be.
And now we're best friends. Can you believe that?
Oh my God. It's so great to watch those vignettes be able to continue to happen so there's still the conflict going on. That's a blast. That's a lot of fun to watch. So I really appreciate that they showed that. I mean, I remember watching like AWA wrestling as a kid, like on Sunday mornings, and it was a little bit of talk and match to match to match to match, but very, very little story driving, more just wrestling match after wrestling match. And pretty soon, if you just start watching that many wrestling matches, you're seeing everything the same way over and over again. So to throw some story into it really makes it better. So that stuff happened. How we got wrestling today came out of these types of things happening. And I want to believe that a large portion of that came from the original actual Glow. So it's a lot of fun to watch.
Well, it really did, because they couldn't take the big bumps. They couldn't hit as hard. They couldn't go as fast. The show was very character driven, and the characters were interesting and they were complex, and they took a lot of strange, weird, and quirky chances that really made the show unique. I mean, when it went into syndication, it didn't stay around for long, but I do remember, like to this day, I do remember some of these characters, and it's because of that type of stuff, those type of chances. Ryan, you being the most practical one of us, in the end, Liberty Bell, she saves her daughter, and the ladies are told they can't get by another TV station because the local network owns their characters. Do you feel they should have just scrapped the characters, grabbed the new TV deal, or just kept fighting on and find a different avenue?
That's a good question. I think, it's a tough one, because I think that in some ways they're all going to be so kind of possessive or I don't know, possessive isn't the right word, but you know what I mean, of their characters. And, you know, why would you want to give that up? You've developed it. That being said, they've shown a level of kind of ingenuity, creativity that they could probably just go and create their own characters again if they wanted to. So I think it could go either way. I definitely think they should have fought, you know, for it and fought to keep going, because clearly they have shown an aptitude for it and this ability to kind of learn on the fly and figure it out. And they did an amazing job for people who were not pro wrestlers. So I definitely think, you know, they should have tried rather than just kind of rather than give up.
IG, in the end, they load the bus, head to Vegas to headline. Your thoughts on the season, the direction of the show, and your rating?
I love all of Glow. Season 1, though, was probably a little bit superior, and that's probably because it was so unexpected. So I went in with high hopes, and my hopes were pretty much met in Season 2. So I really enjoyed it. I think there were more subtle things in this season that got you thinking more, which I really appreciated. But, you know, the in-your-face stuff that happened in the last season, while it was there some, wasn't there as much this time. So I'm still going to give it like an 8, but I really enjoyed it. I really thought it was a good time. If you haven't watched it, you should. You know, the characters in this are great. And I mean, a lot of them have come from other places. I mean, Alison Brie was doing Community. She's been in a bunch of other movies. There's just a deep list of actresses, and she's just the top one. Mark Maron, he's got some stand-up on Netflix too that you can go watch, and it's hilarious. So these people have other careers, and they're doing this, and they're knocking it out of the park. Give it a shot. Go watch Glow on Netflix. I give it an 8.
Yeah, I'm right up there. I think I give it an 8, maybe 8.5 on a more charitable day. I think I actually like this season better than season 1, so then I'm going to give it an 8.5 because I definitely think I wouldn't want to give season 1 a 7.5. So I give this definitely an 8.5. I think it's better than season 1. I think season 1 is a little over the top, and you spend a lot of time, you know, getting to know the characters, the drama between the two kind of leads, dealing with issues with Sam. So I think there's a lot of groundwork that's being laid, along with some of the kind of just over the top stuff that goes on in the season. That while it's hilarious and great, I think this season, as they kind of alluded to, is a little bit more grounded. It's more nuanced. We get a lot more really character moments. It's got a lot more heart, I think, than season 1. I think just between Sam and all of the side characters, I think, you know, this season, the show really becomes an ensemble, because it gets kind of into that Orange is the New Black territory, where we get really a lot more information and background on all the other characters, and in a lot of ways they're more interesting than the leads. Between that and the creativity and them allowing them to go with the wrestling angle and really kind of dive into the wrestling part of it, and, you know, us being kind of old school wrestling fans, like that, just kind of that part's fun to watch. So I think I like the depth that this season has more than season 1, and I'm excited to see where they go. I think it's great to put them in Vegas, put them in a new setting, a new situation. That, you know, it seems like it's going to be fun, and I'm definitely excited for season 3. So yeah, 8.5 for me.
Yeah, I really don't think this show suffered from the sophomore jinx. Great performances all around. We got a much deeper look into the ladies' lives. I mean, I like the idea of them heading to Vegas, because that opens up a whole lot of other story ideas and possibly seeing maybe the old strip. And it gives the show an unknown direction. Mark Maron is amazing. The guy captivates me every time he's on the screen, because you never know what screwed up thing he's going to say or what horrible thing he's going to say next. The only thing the show is missing is more my new best friend, Marianna Palka. Please give us more. We need more of her. I give the second season of Glow an enthusiastic 8.5. IG, take us out.
And that's going to do it for this slamtastic episode of the Cinik Radio Podcast. I'm Igrihe with Cinik and Ryan. Special thank you to Marianna Palka. We loved your interview. Come back anytime. Don't forget to head over to tpublic.com/Cinik for your very own Cinik Radio Podcast swag. T-shirts, sweatshirts, cups, mugs, stickers, anything you could want, you can get at tpublic.com. Just search for Cinik, CINIK. Feel free to send your comments, questions, and concerns to the show at CINIKRADIO.com. You can look for us online at CINIKRADIO.com. Find us on Facebook at Facebook.com/CINIKRADIO. Look for us on Twitter at CINIKRADIO. And you can find us on Instagram at CINIKRADIO. And until next time, don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at CINIKRADIO.com. Available for download on iTunes.